Hey, I'm back for another video, and today we are taking a look at Resident Evil, a series that started in 1996 with Resident Evil, a survival horror game which is iconic and has the most iconic scare in all of gaming. I will only be talking about the games I have personally beat or spent a good amount of time with. I think I have a good understanding on how you should start. I first started back in 2020 or 2021, so I recently got into the series, and they are some of my favorite games. So with all that out of the way, let's start. Alright, Resident Evil 1, a remake released exclusively on GameCube, released March 22nd, 2002, a faithful remake of the original with new things added and only a few things removed. The graphics still hold up to this day, and the atmosphere is absolutely amazing and truly makes you feel like you are at the estate. Re1 takes place in a mansion at the beginning of the zombie outbreak. You can play as Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, two STARS member, which STARS stand for Special Tactics and Rescue. No spoilers for the story, by the way. In this review, just something I thought I'd mention. The gameplay is one of the most divisive parts of the game. Re1 has tank controls from the original, which a lot of people love and a lot of people despise it. Well, I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but it is a deterrent for new players and limited saving. You have to find ink pads, and using those ink pads, you can actually save. So there is no autosave, and Re1 is the very definition of a survival horror game, and it capitalizes on that, limiting your healing supplies and your ammo. The sense of relief you feel when you get to a safe room is unmatched. The calming music makes you feel safe. I would say if you have experience with tank controls and want a survival horror game, all in all, this is a great option, but not the first thing I'd recommend, because the older mechanics can make you frustrated, especially with the save mechanic. But that's all I have to say. Moving on to the RE2 remake. Resident Evil 2 Remake was released January 25th, 2019. This was my first Resident Evil game, and so I am for sure biased, but I think it is one of the best starting places. The gameplay isn't too foreign from other games, and the horror is still there. The graphics are amazing, and the zombies have realistic response to each one of your shots, and their limbs can explode, giving a lot of gore. This game has infinite saving unless you go to the hardest difficulty. The zombies take a lot of shots, which makes you have to manage your ammo more by stunning them instead of killing them completely. The guns themselves feel satisfying to use, and you get quite a few weapons by the end of the game. The puzzles of the game are very simple and easy to understand, which could be a good or bad thing, depending on how much you want intricate puzzle designs. This time, like last time, there are two playable characters, Leon and Claire. Leon is a rookie cop that missed his first day as a cop after breaking up with his girlfriend, and he stops at a gas station on his way to the station the night after. That's where he has to kill his first zombies and meet Claire. Claire is searching for her brother Chris Redfield, aka the protagonist of the last game. Then they were separated by a car accident and forced down separate paths, both ending up at Raccoon City Police Department. I would recommend this game for anyone looking for a scary third-person shooter game with gore and good gameplay. It is a truly breathtaking game, and there is a demo for Resident Evil 2, so you can try it before committing to it. But now let's move on to Resident Evil 3 Remake. The Resident Evil 3 Remake was disappointing to say the least. It was nothing like the original and made the Nemesis less scary by making him a scripted event. It's more of an action game than anything, and it is only 3 to 5 hours long. I wouldn't recommend this game for anyone new or even returning fans from the original. The Resident Evil 2 Remake removed a lot but added a lot at the same time. But the Resident Evil 3 Remake just removed things and forgot to add. It isn't a bad game, it just isn't worth the $60 price, and it's a really bad remake. So that's all I have to say about this game. The original Resident Evil 4 introduced many people to the third-person camera we see in so many games now. Without Resident Evil 4, there would be no Dead Space, no Uncharted, and God forbid, no Fortnite. Yeah, I know. So it would be an understatement to say this game was influential. The lightning was caught in a bottle, and unlike a lot of games inspired by Resident Evil 4, it still holds up to this day. It takes a bit to get used to the tank controls, but the controls are very tight and everything feels like it's in your control. Resident Evil 4 was released January 11th, 2005, 6 years after the original Resident Evil 3. And this game went through development hell. Multiple versions made until they came to the conclusion that fixed camera angles wouldn't be the right move for this game. The third-person camera angle was born. So Leon from Resident Evil 2 is back. He has now come to a rural village in Spain on a mission from the president to rescue his daughter. Resident Evil 4 leans more into the action side of Resident Evil 3, but is still a horror game in a lot of elements. The atmosphere is still scary, being in a foreign country, hearing them speak to each other, plotting against you, but you don't understand what they're saying. The atmosphere of this game feels like it's a place you've been. I don't know how to explain it, but that's how it feels. It can be nostalgia, but it feels like a real place in the world. This game is also very cheesy with early 2000s humor. There are a lot of variety of weapons you can buy from the merchant, and he can upgrade your weapons, and you can also sell your weapons to him. There is also limited ammo, so it feels like a survival horror game, just not as much as the last two. With making sure you have enough health and ammo, it still has a lot of resource management. So I would recommend this game for anyone and everyone thinking about getting into the series or are already in the series, just haven't played it yet. Let's move to the remake. The remake had a lot to live up to, and it delivered. The remake came out on March 23rd, 2023, and made the graphics better and the art design better. The atmosphere of the remake makes the game more horror, which makes sense. It came from the team that made Resident Evil 2 Remake. There are also no longer tank controls and less cheesy humor, but there are still definitely some cheesy one-liners. There's now a parry with your knife, and it comes with durability, adding more management into your resources. You can now craft ammo, which is something I wanted from the original. When I played it, a lot of things I said about the original still stand for this game. There are expanded areas, but one prominent area missing. But in the Separate Ways DLC, they added it back. Separate Ways feels less like a side game and more of a full experience in the remake. It was also in the original, by the way. The DLC gives a lot of new gameplay opportunities. There's also a mercenaries mode in both games, which I didn't play much of, but it was fun when I did. I would recommend this game the same amount as the original. I believe they're both of the same quality. The remake is just more modern in comparison, which is a really good starting point in the series. I will now be talking briefly about Resident Evil 5 and 6. Briefly, because I do not have much to say. These games are not what you want from Resident Evil. They are not horror games. They are not survival horror. They are full action games with shitty quick time events and shitty stories. I would not recommend them at all. Resident Evil 5 isn't awful, but not a good way to get into the series. More of a bonus game after the main series. Resident Evil 6 is not a good Resident Evil game, but it's an okay action game. That's all I have to say about these games. I don't really like them that much, obviously. Now let's talk about the game that put horror back into the series. Resident Evil 7, released on January 24th, 2017, had the hard task of reviving the series because, critically, they were not doing that great, being a survival horror game that could still sell well as well. Resident Evil 7 changed the camera perspective once again and the engine, and made the series first person. The change, I think, was for the better, making you feel more claustrophobic and feel like you are exploring the areas yourself. They also made a PlayStation VR mode, which you still had to use the controller and everything, but your eyes were directly in the setting, so it made you feel like you were there. This game is still not as scary as PT, but I don't think any game ever will. But many people still thought it was too scary. You will always be followed in this game as well, and the game throws gross imagery at you, but nothing too disgusting for me, but maybe I'm just desensitized, I don't know. But they brought back resource management from the earlier games and made it so you were stuck in a house for a portion of the game. And you have to solve puzzles and get out, obviously, like the first two the most. I do not want to spoil anything about this game, so that's all I'm going to say about Resident Evil 7. I would recommend this game if you want a pure survival horror game. Now for the sequel. This game is the Resident Evil 7 version of Resident Evil 4. To sell more copies, they decided Resident Evil 8 would be action to appeal to more people. Released May 7, 2021, the game was less about being stuck in an environment and more about exploring and sometimes staying in one place to solve a few puzzles. And the game is kind of scary sometimes, not really, but you almost always have enough ammo in this game, so resources aren't usually an issue, and especially if you need the ammo, you will most likely have it. This game is a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7, which is one of the first times they actually did this in the series. And it was still seen pretty positively, other than the Resident Evil 7 diehard fans and people that just wanted Resident Evil 7 again, because it was not really a survival horror game like that game. It was just more like Resident Evil 4, which people were not looking for. But they're not like exactly the same, obviously. They just have similarities. And like just more action focusing on that aspect. They're not full blown like Resident Evil 5 or 6. That's all I want to really say. The game is great, but I would recommend it for anyone looking for a action horror-ish game. But I do not think it should be your first game in the series. I think you should start with Resident Evil 7 and then Resident Evil 8. If you made it this far, all I want to say is thank you so much for watching, and if you could like and subscribe, it would help me out a lot. Around 0% of the people that watch these videos actually subscribe. But with that said, this was Cummins. Thank you so much for watching.